Okay, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we are looking at a fast moving, incredibly high stakes ecological mystery. It's a story that starts with a tiny, almost microscopic insect, but it ends with a massive existential threat to our national food supply. We often think of agriculture just in terms of tractors, seeds, and soil, right? But the true engine of our food system is actually much smaller. And right now, that engine is under absolute siege. To really understand the sheer scale of this crisis, we have to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. What happens when our agricultural frontline just packs up and leaves? And I'm not talking about farmhands here. I'm talking about our pollinators. When they abandon their posts, the entire system just grinds to a halt. And in certain parts of India right now, that is exactly what's happening. 50 to 100% colony loss. Just think about that for a second. This staggering number represents the catastrophic losses recently reported by local beekeepers in specific districts. Imagine losing over half or even all of your workforce literally overnight. That's the reality plunging us right into the middle of a massive agricultural emergency. It's not some slow, gradual decline. It is an absolute collapse. So moving into section 1, the new hive invader. Let's track the origin of this microscopic biological threat so we know exactly what we're up against. The rapid, honestly unstoppable march of our culprit, the small hive beetle, is alarming. This beetle is actually native to sub-Saharan Africa, but it was first detected in West Bengal just recently, in September 2022. From there, it spread like wildfire. It moved across Bihar, Assam, and Uttar Pradesh, traveling southward right through Andhra Pradesh, and finally arriving at our present crisis point, where it is causing absolute devastation. And that brings us to Karnataka, which is currently ground zero. Surveys by the University of Agricultural Sciences, Bangalore, have confirmed active, severe infestations in the Chamarajanagar, Mandya, and Mysore districts. But listen, Karnataka isn't just dealing with a localized problem, it's serving as a critical warning bell for the rest of the nation. If it can happen here, it can absolutely happen everywhere. Let's move to section 2, Apis cerana under attack. We need to zoom in on the actual crime scene, the inside of a hive, to see how this invader destroys the eastern honeybee. The biological mechanism here is just brutal. When female beetles lay their eggs inside the hive, the resulting larvae don't just sit around and eat a little honey. They literally tunnel through the combs. They aggressively consume the colony's vital resources, the pollen, the honey, and horrifically, they eat the bee's own eggs and developing pupa. They are literally eating the future generation of the hive. And the aftermath? It's horrific. Imagine the visceral disgust of a beekeeper opening a hive they've carefully tended to, only to be hit by this. The beetle larvae cause the remaining honey to actually ferment and turn slimy. The reports describe it as releasing this foul odor, much like rotting oranges. It's kind of ironic, right? An insect invading a sweet honey factory and turning it into a putrid nightmare. It's a total desecration of the hive. But here is the crucial point for our local beekeepers, the behavioral contrast between bee species. See, while the western honeybee, Apis mellifera, will often try to physically fight these beetles inside the hive, our local eastern honeybee, Apis cerana, has a tragic defense mechanism. They are highly prone to mass abandonment. When the slime and the beetles take over, the entire colony just gives up. They abscond. They flee, leaving all the destroyed equipment and their young behind. Now for section 3, the silent casualties. This tragedy isn't just contained to managed farms. Let's look at the hidden dominoes falling in our wild ecosystems. We have to remember, nature doesn't have borders. Wild Apis cerana, feral colonies, stingless bees, bumblebees, they are all directly at risk. And because these wild bees lack human management, meaning there's no beekeeper checking on them or setting up traps, they are just wiped out in the shadows. They collapse completely unnoticed. Even worse, the beetles complete their life cycle in these abandoned nests, turning our wild spaces into massive, hidden breeding grounds that continuously reinfect managed farms. And then we have our solitary bees, like the megachol and osmia species. Now, they don't produce honey, but they are incredibly important for pollinating our crops. Yet, they are entirely defenseless. Unlike a hive with thousands of worker bees, solitary bees live alone in simple cavities. They have absolutely zero worker force to fight off a coordinated hive beetle invasion. Just look at this step-by-step breakdown. It shows how this invasion builds into an absolute tragedy for these solitary insects. A female beetle easily walks right into the unprotected cavity and lays her eggs. Her larvae then wake up and consume the pollen the mother bee meticulously gathered for her own babies. And then, the beetle larvae ate the developing bee eggs. A single infestation brutally and completely eradicates the entire reproductive effort of an individual's solitary nest. Section 4. Threat to food security. Let's zoom out to the big picture and see how these micro-level deaths directly threatened our broader food security. These figures right here aren't just dry statistics. They represent the massive scale of an entire industry. India has over 1.2 million bee colonies, producing around 125,000 tons of honey every single year. But this isn't just about honey, is it? This is about the farmers' incomes and rural livelihoods that are currently hanging in the balance as these colonies collapse. Because the real value of these bees is right here. Over 90 commercial crops rely on them. When we talk about crops like sunflower, mustard, various fruits and vegetables, we are talking directly about the food on your dinner plate. Without the Apis cerana and our wild bees doing the heavy lifting, crop yields will absolutely plummet. This is a direct hit to national food production. And this brings us to a devastating biodiversity cascade. Now, it is absolutely vital to understand that our pollinators are already highly stressed. They've been fighting a two-front war against heavy pesticide use and the rapid loss of their natural habitats. They are already pushed to the brink. So, when you add the small hive beetle into this already fragile mix, the bottom just falls out. If wild and solitary bees decline, native flowering plants can't reproduce. That means fewer seeds and fruits, which means starvation for birds and small mammals. We're literally ripping the foundation right out from under our local wildlife and destabilizing entire ecosystems. Okay, Section 5. Stopping the beetle. We've seen the devastation, and yeah, it is grim, but we are not powerless. Let's explore the coordinated actions required to catch these falling dominoes. By following these 3 urgent steps, the government and state departments can actually mitigate this disaster. First, a strict quarantine. We have to ban the movement of any bee colonies or equipment out of infested districts like Chamarajanagar, Mandya, and Mysore. Second, massive surveillance. We need traps using simple apple cider vinegar or yeast-based baits set up in a 50-kilometer radius around positive sites. And third, mandatory reporting. Beekeepers must report that slimy, rotting smell or a rapid population drop within 24 hours. Now, on the ground, everyday beekeepers can fight back too. It just requires hypervigilance. Cleaning hive bottom boards every 8 to 10 days destroys the beetle eggs before they can even hatch. Beekeepers need to install in-hive mechanical oil or vinegar traps. Most importantly, beetle spray on the weak, right? So merging weak colonies to maintain strong, populous hives is essential. We can even treat the soil where the beetles pupate using eco-friendly natural biocontrol agents like entomopathogenic nematodes to break their life cycle entirely. But on a macro policy level, mobilizing national law is the ultimate shield we need to protect our agricultural infrastructure. The government of India needs to designate this beetle as a notifiable pest under the Destructive Insects and Pests Act. Doing this unlocks the ability to form a dedicated task force for a coordinated interstate response and launch large-scale training apps and helplines for farmers. We know the exact nature of the threat. We have the practical, on-the-ground solutions, and we know the necessary policy frameworks. But the ultimate question, the one that will define the future of our food security and our already fragile biodiversity, is whether we can coordinate our response in time. Will we act fast enough to save our bees, or will we just sit back and watch the dominoes fall? Definitely something to think deeply about the next time you see a bee buzz by, or honestly, the next time you sit down to eat. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.